Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.
Exploring the unexplained,
breaking down barriers,
putting the macabre under the microscope,
dissecting the disturbing,
seeking out the sinister,
bringing you the jinkies and the jump scares. If you've been listening to us for a while, then you're probably used to being tortured by the sound of my voice every Friday.
Mine in there too.
But welcome back to Freaky Fridays, guys. And today, Megan and I are going to be talking about medieval torture devices.
I'm excited, but also a bit maybe not, because I love the medieval age. I already always have.
Yeah.
Although I'm now realizing I love the sort of fairy tale version of the medieval age that I used to believe in.
The sugar-coated version.
Exactly.
I mean, this was really interesting to research because, I mean, there are a lot of like medieval torture devices and techniques that have been used in like film and stuff that you know about, and there are a lot that I'd never heard of.
Some very messed up things. The people who came up with these I question on every level.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, what kind of level of disturbed do you need to be? Because some of these are really intricate and like detailed
and thought out to an extent that is just bizarre.
This perhaps makes me a serial killer, but while I was researching it, I was trying to think like, you know, if you had to create a method, what would it be? And I was not creative enough at all.
Not to come close to some of these.
No, I mean, my ideal torture method would just be to put someone in a never-ending queue.
I have to so agree with that. That is
hate standing in
brilliant.
queues. I think that is like my worst, is standing in a queue that feels like it's never gonna end.
Last night, I didn't come up with one. I experienced one when somebody's car alarm started going and clearly they weren't around and it went going all night long.
That is so weird that you say that, because when I was researching this, there was a bird outside my window that started the minute I started researching this topic, but not like a cheerful, happy tune. This bird sounded like it wasn't sure what it was doing.
Drilling through your head.
Yeah, squawking for like an hour. I was like, could we perhaps not?
Setting the tone for you, Devin. Like, you can dive in there.
100%. But yeah, I think to dive in, I think we should maybe go with one that a lot of people know of. And that is something called rat torture.
Also known as that Game of Thrones scene.
Yeah. I feel like when you say rat torture, it just sounds like what happens when a guy who's really unattractive traps you and tries to talk to you for like an hour.
Oh, that's my new favorite terminology now. And it is completely true.
But anyway, the real theme of rat torture, if you one of the few people who have not watched Game of Thrones, is basically what they do is they put it's either like one rat or a whole bunch of rats that are really hungry. They trap them in a cage against your chest or your stomach, and eventually the rats go absolutely insane and start clawing and biting through your flesh
To escape.
to escape the cage, and will eventually.
I've also heard where it'll be more of a pot and they'll heat the pot up.
Yeah. It has. Yeah, that's another method. But yeah, there are different.
Now you see, my problem, and this is not going to stand me in a good light, but my problem and first and foremost thought with this torture method is the poor rats.
I know.
Like, don't, they did nothing. Don't bring them into this.
The animal lover in me is not happy.
Exactly.
Like, where is PETA when you need them? Call them.
I think one of the ones that like caught my attention was something called the heretic's fork.
Oh, yes. I also came across that.
This is really messed up.
Yeah.
But basically it was for people who were not religious and part of the Catholic Church. And would go about sprouting things that sort of didn't line up with the religious beliefs of the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
And they would be captured, and to make them stop talking and ensure that obviously they didn't sprout what they thought was nonsense. This device was sort of, I think it was attached to the neck, almost like a necklace.
Yeah.
And it's a double fork device, and it's got these 2 sharp prongs at each end of it. And one end will sort of sit just underneath your chin. You've like actually got to tilt your head up so that it doesn't pierce it. And the other end will sit on top of your chest.
Yeah.
So that if you try to talk at all, you're going to impale yourself on either end.
I would be screwed. I talk way too much.
Okay, that's a little messed up.
Yeah, no. Another one that I read up on that just, as a woman, scarred me.
I think I know what you're going to say, and I think...
Could it mayhaps be the breast ripper?
Yes, it's that. When I read that, every fiber in me cringed. I actually folded in on myself just picturing that. It's like when, I know this is maybe random to say, but if you mention to a guy getting kicked in certain areas, and they all sort of
they
get
flinch.
this they get this traumatized look on their face just picturing it. It felt like that.
Yeah, it was the female equivalent, basically.
Definitely was.
So the breast ripper was an instrument that kind of just looks like a really terrifying giant set of salad prongs. And basically what they would do is they would either heat it or freeze these giant sharp salad prongs, and then they would attach it to a woman's breast and rip it off.
What kind of sick people live in this world, man?
We've already spoken about one medieval torture device, and we're now as long as it's a breast ripper, we're like, what kind of sick people? What kind of sick individual? But yeah, the breast ripper to me, even though it's not, I think, the most torturous method.
It's terrible. It just resonates on too many levels. Nope.
Yeah, no, don't rip
None of
anyone's
that.
boobs off. It's not cool.
There's also the tongue tearer.
Ooh, I didn't see that one.
It's just not pleasant
Is
either.
it like the similar concept
Pretty
to breast ripper?
much similar concept. I think especially back in the day, removing all a part of the tongue was actually a thing. They did that quite often. Especially it was a punishment during biblical times.
Okay.
Anyway, this torture device would have its what they call the jaws on it, would sometimes be really hot.
Yeah.
Or quite often, and then it's pretty much the same concept. They would pull the tongue as far forward
That's
as
painful in
possible.
itself.
Exactly. Scalding hot, pulling your tongue all the way forward, and then they would chop it off.
Oh my word, no.
And the thing is, it was they sometimes they considered it an operation. Not really, they're just torturing people. But it was that chopping off part was sometimes unsuccessful.
Oh,
if
nice.
the knife was blunt, so they would take a little more, hacking. That's how you got it. Just painting the picture.
I'm such a visual person.
So am I.
Oh. But can I just go back to the breast ripper for a second? Why does that sound like the female counterpart of Jack the Ripper? Like the breast
That's
ripper.
right. I had the same thought.
Just occurred to me while I was reading the title. But another one that, I don't know, it's again not probably the most torturous method, but sort of just made my skin crawl, is something called keel hauling. And during the 18th century, it was a really popular form of punishment by pirates and Navy men. Navy men? Girl, who knows?
Seamen.
I was thinking it, but she said it. But basically, victims would be tied to the ship and then tossed overboard, and they would just be dragged behind the ship, essentially.
Jeez.
But that's not the worst part. There were obviously jagged barnacles attached to the ship.
Yeah.
And that would just completely, slice them up.
Shark bait.
Exactly. It would end up luring hungry sharks.
No, jeez, that's terrible, man.
So
I don't do the sea. I don't do sharks. No.
You're basically thrown overboard as chum.
Gee, that's dark, man. I think we have to throw in the brazen bull.
Ooh,
Just
that one
because
was...
that one's messed up on every letter. I've known about the brazen bull for a long time, but it's so messed up.
It wasn't some show that I watched.
So
I just
there's
remember
this
what it
show,
was.
I don't know if you all have seen it, but I'm obsessed with dark versions of fairy tales, and there was a dark version of Red Riding Hood that came out as a film a few years ago, and it was in there.
I have a feeling it was in American Gods, but I could be wrong.
There's, I think, a ton of movies that they actually use it in.
I think it might have been American Gods, but anyway, I digress.
So the way this thing works is it's a huge metal and bull that this guy developed, and the victim would be placed inside of it. It's a hollowed out sort of brass bowl, and it's built with a fire that gets lit underneath it.
Yeah.
So the victim would be thrown into it and sealed in there. And there's this system of tubes inside the statue that would sort of amplify the victim's screams, and it would make it sound like a raging bull.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they would throw the victim in there, light the fire, and obviously that metal heating up would absolutely... I can't even imagine the kind of pain that must cause.
This was one of the ones that when reading, I was like, that is so twisted.
It is. It sits with you on a weird level. Like you actually get messed up thinking about it.
To the point where you put it in like the form of a bull to mimic the cries of a raging bull.
Exactly, adjust a sound system to make it sound like that.
Yeah.
Who wants to sit listening to that?
But another interesting fact about that one that I read, I don't know how true it is, but the person that created it obviously presented it to the king or whatever.
And the king was so disturbed that he threw the creator in it. That's what I heard.
I don't know if he threw him in. The one I read said that he somehow convinced him to get inside and then he killed him. Yeah.
Well, you know what? So if you're right, invent something that messed up. Taste your own medicine.
I feel like he just like presented it and he was like, it's art. Seems like one of those art kids that's just like, yes, it's disturbing, but it's art.
Well, I think that's also an important thing to note is during those times, torturing people was a form of entertainment. People would willingly go and watch this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it also happened with a lot of surgeries, I believe. Like watching surgeries and executions was a form of entertainment.
Exactly. Weird people, man.
Thank God we have TV now.
Exactly.
And the internet. This one was one that also stood out to me because there was an image below the little description. I was like, I could have lived without that one. It was something called the Judas Cradle.
Oh, I've heard of this.
Which is actually a really good band name if you're in a metal band. Just saying. But
probably already exists.
Probably. I'm gonna look it up after this. But it's actually described as one of the most disturbing torture methods. And basically, the victim would be hoisted above what was sort of like a pyramid-type device. And very slowly and very forcibly, they would be lowered onto the tip of the pyramid.
Ooh, that's a visual I did not need.
Yeah. Like I said, I saw the image and I was like, I could have lived without that one.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, pairing with that, because you said that was called the Judas Cradle.
Yeah.
There's another one called the Chair of Torture. Or
I saw that one.
Also called, I think, the Judas Chair. The way that one works is it's a seat full of like spikes and
I saw a picture of it as well. It's like blades and spikes.
Exactly. And people would be forced down into that chair and it would just split their skin and rupture skin and organs. And they would sit there sort of bleeding out because the way it would work is it wounded them and they would bleed out at such a slow rate. So I think it was also described as one of the most like sort of terrible means of torture.
Though when I was doing research on that one specifically, I did come across something that said experts believe that it was actually more likely presented as a sort of like a symbol of power, and they didn't really use it that much. Like they probably did use it every now and then, but it wasn't used as much.
Well, it's so messed up. I really hope they didn't use it much.
Yeah.
I know, like if you think about movies, dramatic movies where the villain always sits in this like really spiked evil chair, maybe, I don't know.
But one that I think is also pretty well known, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I watch a lot of really creepy stuff, is the rack.
The rack's a popular one. That's, I think, one people easily associate with the medieval times.
Yeah. So basically what the rack was, if you want to, again, one of the few people living under a rock. I mean, who doesn't know about medieval torture devices?
Come on, people, get with it.
But yeah, basically you would have each one of your limbs, so both your arms, both your legs, pulled at different angles, tied or pulled at different angles, and they would slowly be cranked by wheels, I guess, and it would slowly but surely tear you limb from limb.
I used to picture a not as dangerous version of that to get taller. What if they could just stretch me out a little bit and might work in my favor?
Like humans are made of Laffy Taffy.
Exactly.
Oh, what was that action figure? I think it was like an 80s or 90s action figure. Stretch Armstrong?
Oh, yes.
You could like pull his arms. I love that was your go-to when talking about the rack. Like, yeah, if I could just stretch you and make you a tiny bit taller.
I used to think of that. I was desperate back in the day.
There's another one that I came across that to me is never, like I'm speaking from experience or something. I didn't ever think that it was something that seemed that bad, and that's Chinese water torture.
I've also, you would sort of watch it, and I think the lack of visual does a lot for that.
Yeah.
But I think, isn't it called waterboarding?
Something like that.
Yeah. And
know.
yet, if you had to think
Chinese
about
water
it,
torture.
yeah. So it's I think along the we're thinking about the same thing
Where
where
you drip
yes,
water in the same spot on someone's head, yeah.
I have the same thought as you. I saw that and I was like, how? What does that do? Like, there are summer days where I wish that would happen to me. So what? But supposedly it drives you mentally insane.
Well,
I just don't understand how.
I don't know, maybe my brain is remembering incorrectly, but I feel like there was a Mythbusters episode on it that I watched years ago. And I'm pretty sure Carrie, is that the redhead girl
Yes,
from
yes,
Mythbusters?
yes.
Pretty sure she put it to the test, and she, I think by the end of it, was in tears, if I recall correctly. So, I mean, it's a form of medieval torture. It's
That's
clearly
something.
effective. But yeah, to me it just...
It's
it was,
odd.
Yeah.
Who even thinks that up? I'm going to drop some drops of water onto your head and you're going to go mad.
Though I suppose it's like, I don't know if you've ever had the experience, like when you're dating someone or something, they're holding your hand and they rub the same spot over and over. And eventually it feels like you want to peel your skin off.
That's a very good analogy now that I think of it that way.
Yeah, so it's
you're
probably
right,
very
actually.
similar.
Okay, I see where they're going. There were other things that I think not all torture devices were as deviously well thought out and detailed and horrendous. There were obviously times where they would just use sort of simple tools lying around like saws.
Oh, nice.
Or even just cages. I mean, we all know the classic movie thing of a hero being thrown into a cage and strung up from the ceiling.
Yeah.
That was one of them.
One that's always stood out to me, it's obviously not a medieval torture thing, but it's always like, when I've seen it in film and stuff, always been like, eesh, seems painful. When the character or the person has their arms strung above their head and they're hanging by their arms. I'm just like, oh, but the pain.
I always thought of that as well, because the moment I have to work with my arms above my head, like you're changing a light bulb or you're just doing something that your arms, I die. Like on so many levels, I'm like, I can't.
I helped my mom paint the lounge when I was back in East London, and the next day I was like a broken shell of a human.
I've just always known if it comes down to this moment where I'm hanging off a cliff and I have to rely on my own arms to do this, I'm done for. That's it.
Yeah, I might as well just let go and be like, You know what, it's been a good run. But another one that I came across that, again, I feel like an asshole, sorry, saying this, but it's like, it doesn't seem like that bad. I haven't experienced this, so I need to shut up, but something called the Scold's Bridle. So basically it was used as a form of like public humiliation and torture. It's more on the humiliation
That's
side.
the thing I found as well. There were certain methods of torture which were more public humiliation things, and I'm like, I don't care what people think anyway, they can do that.
Which makes sense, because like my anxiety is so bad that I'm just like, I'm weighing up like public humiliation and actual pain are sort of on the same level. But yeah, basically with this is, it was mainly for those who were accused of like infidelity or prostitution or witchcraft. They would be put in this sort of iron mask that went over their heads.
I know what this is. Have you seen that iron mask? It looks like something out of a horror movie.
Did you ever watch Man in the Iron Mask?
Yes.
Such a good movie. But yeah, so it had these like spiked mouthpieces that would prevent you from speaking.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When I first saw this, I didn't know what it was. I just thought, oh my god, someone's turned on a horror film. What is this? I'm running away now. It just makes the person in it look badass, for lack of a better word.
Not badass, terrifying. Again, it looks like that turnip that we spoke about in the previous episode. Like an iron version of the turnip. The iron turnip mask.
Iron turnip mask.
Humiliation.
Well, while we're talking about iron, we can't forget the Iron Maiden. I mean, that one's just such a classic.
Also, the band is great. Just saying.
And I mean, if you don't know this, what is wrong with you? every cartoon or every story in my life, I feel, has featured one of these somewhere along the line.
What kind of stories have you been listening to, girl?
I podcast a Freaky Friday show. What do you think?
Fair enough. It's a fair point.
But I mean, come on, like the Addams Family.
Yeah.
Even I think Courage the Cowardly Dog, all those messed up cartoons they would show us when we were kids.
Yeah. That they would show us, like we didn't seek it out.
And this is more like a coffin-like device, and the inside of it is lined with spikes. And the victim would be placed inside of the chamber, and then the executioner would close it, and that would be that. Although, what I've read, people didn't actually use this very often. It was more to create fear.
Yeah, it's like that chair thing.
Exactly.
Chair thing. But you know what the Iron Maiden kind of reminds me of?
What?
Like a more hardcore adult version of the Chokey from Matilda.
Yes, I thought of that as
that?
well. My first thing, for some reason, when I thought of this, I suddenly thought of the movie Matilda, and I was like, where did that come from?
That was dark,
It
man.
really was.
If y'all haven't watched Matilda, like, I'm pretty sure almost everyone has watched Matilda, but there's a little hole in the wall, basically. It's not even a room, just filled with like nails and glass and stuff, and the principal locks kids in there.
It was only at this point in time, while researching that and then suddenly thinking back to Matilda, did I suddenly question that. I was like, good grief.
Yeah, no. She also force-fed a child chocolate cake. Like, I mean, sounds great in theory.
Well, speaking of force feeding, that's another actual method
I know
of
what you're
torture.
talking about.
Is it pronounced scaphism?
Yes, I think so. Scaphism.
And that's nasty. That is just really nasty on every level. But the way this would work was a victim was force-fed really large quantities of milk and honey. Like, up until the point, like, they had really bad diarrhea. They would then be doused with more honey and strapped into a rowboat and set adrift, and they would slowly be consumed by insects.
Yeah, and apparently also if the bugs didn't like do their job, you would die of exposure and sort of just lying in your own
filth. Exactly,
Yeah.
it's disgusting.
Pretty gross.
Who comes up with this stuff?
I feel like there's just like a meeting. They're like, has anyone brought any new ideas to the table? Someone's like, okay, hear me out. We force feed them milk and honey.
5-minute pitch, go.
Elevator pitch. Elevator pitch for medieval torture.
There we go.
But there's another one. I feel like this is quite a common one or a well-known one. Is something called Ling Chi.
That's a Chinese torture, as far as I know.
It's basically known as the death of 1,000 cuts.
Cuts, yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty much what it says on the tin. Like, you just get cut up slowly but surely until you're basically mincemeat.
You see that I can see sort of driving me mad before anything else.
Yeah.
Just these slow, tedious cuts, like just building up on your body. I can feel like that. I can feel that pain building up, driving me into an insane state.
I know that what they mean is like obviously taking either like a knife or a dagger or sword or whatever to do these slices, but in my head it's like paper cuts.
Oh my word, I was picturing the same thing. I can't believe you just said that.
Like
I was also thinking all these little terrible paper cuts, because let's be honest, paper cuts are the worst.
They're so bad.
And I was picturing the same thing.
Yeah. And okay, wait, where was it? There was something. It might have been something I read, like a short story or whatever. Very like almost like the movie Seven, where this person was killing based on the 7 deadly sins. I can't remember what the sin was, but
Brilliant anime.
what they did is they chucked this person into a pit of razor blades and then threw them into like a kiddie pool of
Good
lemon
grief.
juice.
You see, this is how people come up with the sick idea of putting razor blades on slides and things.
What?
Yeah, that was a big thing in the US a few years ago. On playgrounds, people would go and put razor blades on the slides and things of children, and yeah.
Is that not like the whole Halloween thing of like putting razor blades in candy where it was like...
Yeah, you see, this is how this stuff all starts.
But the thing is, the razor blades and candy thing, people found out was more just like an urban legend than people. I think there was one guy who did it to get the life insurance on his kid or something.
And then everyone would build, well, I mean, fair enough, build it up into a story to make people be careful of that kind of thing. You don't want that happening
razor
again.
blades on slides, ew. But anyway, moving on to more disturbing things. Another one I think is well known as flaying.
Yeah, that's sort of your standard. I think if you think back to most eras in the ages, flaying, especially biblical punishments, flaying was a big thing.
I feel like a serial killer, but you know what I think would make flaying worse? It's to, like, use a potato peeler.
Your mind scares me sometimes.
I don't know, like, you know how we said, like, the death of 1,000 cuts, we're imagining,
I think,
like,
you know
paper
what,
cuts.
I think we can relate it to certain things that have happened to us. Like, you accidentally just slice yourself on one of those and you immediately know that kind of pain, so this is what you're relating it to.
I don't know, I somehow feel like being cut with a potato peeler or, like, skinned with a potato peeler would be pretty hardcore.
I think that needs a category and name all of its own. You've just come up with your elevator pitch.
I literally feel I've come up with my elevator
The
pitch.
potato peeler.
I feel like a serial killer. I'm gonna be quiet now.
There's also other, like, not cliche, but very well-known ones, like the breaking wheel. And that's where, especially sort of, I mean, I'm thinking Hunchback of Notre Dame now, except it did not get to this.
That movie was so dark, I'm sorry.
But where victims would be placed on this large rotating wheel. And okay, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Disney, keep it PG, we're just gonna throw tomatoes at the dude. But the way this worked back in medieval days was this really big dude with a giant hammer, iron hammer, would take a whack at all your limbs, breaking everything as you rotated.
That was one of the ones that I, when researching, said it was a form of entertainment, where they would do it in the town square or whatever, and I'd be like, can we hit him? What are we gonna miss? So it was like a game, almost like whack-a-mole, but with humans.
Definitely. Okay, well, before we wrap up here, you 5 seconds, Devin. Your top 5 list of the most painful that you think after everything we've gone through.
Oh, I can't even remember. I did say that one was particularly disturbing to me, and now I can't remember what it was.
I think, just because
Top 5.
I'm gonna say the breast ripper has to be on our list.
Don't steal it, that's my list.
It has to be on it. I'm gonna throw the brazen bull in there. That one just messes me up when I hear it. So I think that's...
It's so disturbingly creative, and I think that's what sets me on edge.
Okay, so 2 on there are the breast ripper and the brazen bull. What else?
Breast ripper, it's still like such a horrible name. I think flaying is pretty disturbing, especially potato peeler wise.
Devin's potato peeler flaying, 3rd on the list.
Yeah. That's up there for me.
I don't know, scaphism is really messed up to me.
I was about to say that,
I'm gonna throw that one in there.
Yeah.
And
What's that, 4?
That's 4,
okay,
yeah.
one
we
more.
need one more.
Oh,
when you suddenly have to narrow it down.
Death of 1,000 Cuts seems pretty horrible.
It does. It's a slow really, yeah. I don't know, I can like feel that one happening to me when I hear it. So yeah, let's throw that one in there.
Okay, yeah, that's our top 5.
There you go, guys. Now you know our top 5 torture devices. Don't mess with us when we get angry.
We want to hear your lists though, so we're actually on Instagram now. It's Freaky Fridays Podcast on Instagram, so you can go let us know in the comments what your top 5 medieval torture techniques / devices are.
See you next week.
Freaky Fridays, hosted by Devin Beatty
and Megan Portnoy, and produced with the generous assistance of Janu Blau
and Blended Podcasts. Brought to you by Blended Audio.